Pull up. Park it. Kick back, spark it. Welcome to the spot where money talks honest. Yeah. This is Gosh Talk with Bill Haase. Real life money in your front seat. From the paycheck to the profit. Turn that I don't know to I got this. Gosh Talk with Bill Haase. Blueprint stacked on the workbench. From the hustle to the harvest. Learning what they never really taught us. So if you're tired of the fine print winning, slide a chair in, that's a new beginning. We keep it straight, keep it smart, keep it classy. You're tuned in now, Garage Talk with Bill Haase.
Welcome to the Garage Talk with Bill Haase. Today I have a special guest, Ed Holiday, on, and we're talking about the con job. And it's something that Ed and I can relate to. We've had a conversation about this and thought this would be something very important for folks to hear about, learn about, and hopefully not fall into similar traps that both Ed and I have fallen into. So, Ed, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Bill, thank you so much for having me. I just, when you say con job and you wonder who's listening, but I think everybody in America needs to listen to this show because it's very important.
I appreciate it. You know, what we're trying to do with this show is help enlighten people on financial literacy and hopefully help them improve their lives and their lifestyles. But so that's our goal. And one of those is there's a lot of con jobs out there all the time, every day, everywhere, trying to come at us, right? Whether it's in emails or texts, phone calls, things of that nature, whether it's financial. Let's say they call themselves financial advisors, but they're really not.
Yep.
And I've heard my fair share of stories, and unfortunately, much like you, I've participated in my own con job story that I lost money in. But let's hear what yours is. What happened here, Ed?
All right, Bill, let me just tell you, and I've mentioned to you, mentioned to all your listeners that I had a bad experience, one of the worst experiences I've had in my lifetime when I did get conned, and it happened on Valentine's Day, 2025, just,
Oh, wow.
within a year.
Yeah.
And it came from, and some red flags were up. I didn't notice them, probably because I was just, there's a lot of things going on Valentine's Day. And they caught me at a time. I had my guard down, and I look back, can't believe it happened. But I did document everything in a book called Crypto Conned, My 200K Nightmare. And that gives away how much I lost, $200,000 in some cryptocurrencies. And it really rocked my world. And so that's why I decided to tell my experience. And you heard about that and others. And I'm sure you know too, that when you share your experience, a lot of people will come up and tell about the experiences they've had of being conned, and it's
right.
So it's all over the place, and there's cons out there everywhere. It's sad to say, but it's even gotten worse with the computers, with the AI
Right.
generation of documents that look real but they're fake,
Right.
and I got caught up in that, Bill, and that's why I am on your show, because I realize I can't get my money back. And as much as you want revenge and everything else and I, filed forms with the FBI, my local police department, and they tried to be helpful where they could, but it's, again, it's gone, and the scammers are out scamming other people. So my way to get back is to tell the truth, share my story, and get people prepared so they won't have to go through what I went through.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I faced a similar situation. I actually was involved in a crypto deal that never panned out, but fortunately, I didn't really lose money on that one. But I did lose money on another one, and quite a bit. I told you my story when I traveled to Dubai.
Right.
I thought I was borrowing money from a sheik that I had done business with when I was in the trading pits. It turned out to not be him and other people. And, you know, I lost over into six figures myself. And I don't want to say exactly what, because I don't want my wife to hear this. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
but because I'm still working that off, much like I'm sure you are. But fill us in more about but what occurred with you.
Yeah, well, Bill, it's one of those things that going back, and again, uh, I, when everything happened, and I realized I'd been conned, which I was full of guilt and shame,
Yeah.
and I'll talk about that some. But a friend of mine is in the computers, and and they got my computers, and so he had to clean up my computers, and he said, "Ed, you're a good writer. You really ought to write a book, because I know so many people got scammed, conned, and they don't want anybody to know." And that's one reason why the scammers succeed, because again, people won't talk about it, and they won't, they are full of guilt and shame, and they just don't want anybody to know. And I was that same way. But you ask how it started, and I've told your listeners it was on Valentine's Day of 2025, and I was minding my own business and looking at getting taxes ready for income tax, and get some things to my accountant, and I got a phone call. And I just, and I on my cell phone looked at it and said Google, it showed up as a Google. And I
Okay.
thought, what's Google calling me? And it made me think, well, maybe it's really Google. And I know better than that now. And every listener should know, if Google calls you, it's not Google, because they will never call you.
Yeah,
So
I
right
I
there.
try not to answer any phone numbers that I don't recognize. I
And
figure if it's something important, they'll leave a message.
yeah, and again, most times I do that, and why I picked it up, but they said, hey, we have your account has been frozen, and they just told me my account was frozen, and because they had thought some bad actors were getting in, and they told me an email address. Said, have you ever heard this email? I said no, but then I told them, hey, I don't believe you're Google any more than a man on the moon. I don't believe you. And they said, well, we'll send you an email. And, send emails from Google. And they had my email address. See,
Okay.
it made me think, and, and, and think, well, and then I looked at all that, and I still said, no, Google doesn't call me. And they said, well, we're trying to help you, of course. And then finally they said, well, if we send you a message on YouTube, on your YouTube app. And I thought, who could send me a message on my YouTube app except for Google? Because Google owns YouTube.
Oh,
But
right.
again, so they were convincing me. And then this was about a 30-minute process of going back and forth, looking at the emails. And then and then I got a message on my YouTube app. Do you recognize this? And then I got the little 3 circles and 3 numbers, and I had to pick a number, and they told me which number to pick. And they said, we're sending this. And, again, I hadn't gone back, and people told me how, what happens. And I knew, and all they wanted to do is change my password of a temporary password. They
Uh,
weren't asking for anything except for that. And
yeah,
then,
let's just change that password so
yeah.
we can get control. Yeah.
They were saying somebody's trying to get in to protect your account. You just need a temporary password. And so it convinced me that after about 30 minutes, hey, I needed to protect that, and I let them do the password. And then I said, is that it? I said, yeah, that's it. You're protected now. Goodbye. I mean, and again, I didn't think much about it. I was continuing on my day.
Yeah.
And then about an hour later, I got a call, and said, and I did have crypto. People don't have crypto, don't know. If you have an exchange, you have an account on an exchange, and there's one of the exchanges called Coinbase. And it's one of the most popular exchanges in the world.
Yeah.
And Coinbase, their credit, they say, we will never call you. We will never call you. Now, I've heard that 100 times. And
Yeah. Huh?
but they then got the phone call saying they said we are Coinbase Asset Protection Services. And
Interesting.
you know they called and said, were you trying to get in And I knew, and I put this in the book. In the book, I go and I give the full detail. I'm giving you, uh, the 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 nuts and bolts of what happened. But basically, they were convincing me. What convinced me was, again, I said I don't believe it, and they sent me emails, but they knew the exact number of coins. I had 1,999 chain link tokens. And they knew exactly because they had read my emails
Okay.
and they'd figured out how many, so it convinced me that they were from Coinbase because they knew my account. They knew what was in my account.
Okay. Yeah.
And then they started breaking into other things. But anyway, but I took about another 35, 40 minutes of sending emails back and forth. And, and they said, hey, you pick any old email. You pick any email that you've ever had to Coinbase, any correspondence, and we'll answer. Just prove that we're from Coinbase. And again, it just going back and forth. The easiest thing to done was to hang the phone up and say, you scammer, and go
Well,
pound
that's
sand.
hindsight. We all, any of us who have been cheated, you were accurately stated, we feel ashamed. We look back upon it and say, how did we let this happen? How did we not see the signs? How did we not, at least, take action on the signs that we saw? And for me, part of it was greed. For me, I was trying to build a business. So I didn't want to believe the signs that told me this wasn't real. But for you, you're involved a little bit in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I'd been, that's the thing. I wasn't like a newbie. I'd been doing this for about, 7, 8 years, starting in
Okay.
2018. And so I thought I had things secure. But now what you just said, Bill, I'll follow up. And I mentioned that very thing in my book. And where they caught me, I told you there's 1,999 chain link tokens that I had on the crypto exchange. And I thought nobody else would know that. And at the time, they were worth about $38,000. And of course, and again, in my book, Crypto Con, my 200K nightmare, and I got a book, I got a website, I can tell people that right now is, you can go to cryptocontobook.com and explain a little bit more. And there I even got a little a game you can play to see if you're ready for scammers, just to ready for
I like
scammers.
that.
I got a friend to help me put it together you got a timer and you got to make decisions, and that's what happens. And they get you in this position. But I was going back to explain, I knew it's worth $38,000. They were telling me somebody, or they're taking it off now. And if that's not you, we need to secure your account by. They didn't tell me to move my money off Coinbase. They said we need to move your account from the exchange to a wallet, to a Coinbase wallet.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And again, they were, and if you get the book, I do go into the what happens to the brain, and you get in the fight or flight mechanism. Everybody's heard about that, fight or flight. You get
Sure.
epinephrine now for your listeners may not know, I get called Doc Holliday because my last name's Holiday, and I am a dentist, and that's it's flowed for since I was in dental school. A lot of people just call me Doc Holliday, and so but being a dentist, we work with anesthetic. They may have been to the dentist and get your mouth numb, so we can work in your mouth. We use the epinephrine is in the anesthetic. Most time we got some without epinephrine. For some patients can't handle it.
Yeah.
But the epinephrine will, sometimes you'll get, I'll see my patients get a little rush, and I see a little sweat pop up on their forehead. And, and I know they have a look, because they can feel their heart's beating. They're going, what's going on? But that's what happens when you get a rush of epinephrine, when somebody, like you said, is greed as a part of, go back in the biblical principles and Proverbs, or, pride goeth before a fall. And they were trying to, all I knew is they were telling me that somebody was trying to steal my $38,000 in that account. And and again, you go in that fight or flight mode. Your brain, you get a shot of epinephrine.
Yeah.
Your brain makes it, and to protect you. That's in our, and that's how the scammers know when they threaten, or when they, when they do something to get your mind, get your brain to make natural epinephrine.
That's
and
very
you're in
interesting.
that fight or flight mode. And what happens is, and this is what I detail in the book, and the book's not long, but it tells my story. But to know what's happening with the brain, the front part of the brain, when you're in that epinephrine fight or flight mode, your rational decision making is reduced. And that happens naturally, because if you see a tiger, you're going to have to do something. You see a bear out in the woods, you're going to have to do something. You're
Right.
going to run or think, do something. And so that's what they get you in that mindset, and your frontal part of the brain that does rational thinking, it gets not shut down, but it gets diminished so that you can fight or flight. And the scammers use this. And then, they put that out there that somebody's trying to steal your $38,000.
Yeah.
And then, so you don't make rational decisions. You want to protect that. And because
It's
going
super
back to the
interesting.
pride.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this before. So I'm learning something new here today.
And most scams have that, where it's a sense of urgency. You got to do it now. And you get your brain into that fight or flight mode. And so that's, again, I detail a little bit more what happens in the brain in my book, but that causes you not to make good decisions. And in that crucible of the moment, this is the scammers, and they've practiced, they know the words to say, they know how to groom you and it's called social engineering. And they are grooming you and you think that they are on your side. These are the scammers. These are the scoundrels. These are the thieves. These are the nasty people who deserve to be thrown in jail. But they are good at it. They're practiced at it. They do it all day long. And then you think they are your friend and they are helping you.
Right.
They are on your side. Those mean old people there somewhere are trying to steal your money, and they
we're
put
here to
on
help
the
you.
con job.
Yeah.
We are here to help you.
That makes a lot of sense. Especially the urgency part. I mean, I think a lot of people understand when there's an urgency to something like this, where you get a call or an email. People are learning that, whoa, that's a red flag. But we don't always follow that,
Right.
because like you said, some of these folks are very, very smooth and very, well practiced at their skills. But this is interesting, because I haven't heard of this before, but it makes complete sense.
Well, and then that's one reason when I saw this, I thought, man, I got to put this in a book. People got to know about it. And the computer security expert was one saying, you'll help so many people if you do this. And so, and I'm finding that out, as I'm explaining here to your listeners, and I'm so grateful that, I learned to survive, but it wasn't. And as you know, when it happens and I go through it, when I realized, the moment I realized I was being scammed, and it's on, I detail everything in the book so people will know what to look for. But the scammer hung up. They knew I was on to it, but they'd already stolen him, because what had happened, and this is the thing in detail in the book, is, again, you think they're your friend, and I was having trouble. They were walking me through the computer trying to move my cryptocurrencies from my account into a account they set up for me in my name and made everything feel right, of course. And they were moving things there. And once they got it there, I could see it. Everything looked legit.
Yeah.
And then they went to do another one. And I said, well, where's my Bitcoin? I had some Bitcoins that we'd moved over to make safe, And they said, oh, it'll show up in 24 hours. And I said, no. I said, wait a minute. I said, I saw it there a while ago and I don't see it there now.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started, trying to, well, let's move on to this other thing. They're trying to, and anyway, that's where I, that's, they knew I was
It kind
on
of
to it
hits
and
you.
they just hung up.
Yeah. It once it hits you and they realize it, they're gone.
Yeah. And,
Uh,
and it was in my, they were in my computers. So, and that's what I was about to tell you. They said there was something we couldn't see good, and they said, and this is just as subtle, and they knew what they're doing. They said, look, we want to help you, but we can move quicker if you just give us access to your screen, so I can see what you're seeing. Of course, that gives them access to your entire computer
yep.
and everything, and it's horrible. And I wrote in a book, it's like watching one of those horror films and you're saying, please don't go in there. Don't go in that room. There's the monsters in the room. And that's what I went in that room.
Well, that's part of being good-hearted people. We want to trust others, especially those that are sitting there saying, we're just here to help you,
Oh, yeah.
and you want to trust those folks. But I agree with you. I don't think jail's enough, personally. But please continue on.
Yeah. Well, you said, and when you realize what has happened, I mean, it hurts so bad. And then you have the guilt and the shame and it's just like getting hit, somebody hitting you with, on top of the head with a 2x4 and knocking you out almost. You just dumbfounded, and you hate it. And my wife was downstairs, and I had to, go downstairs and tell her it's on Valentine's Day.
Uh,
And so I told her the words, I just got scammed. And and of course, she go, well, how much? And at that time, I didn't even know. I hadn't even gone, but I knew. And at that point, I thought I'd lost about $50,000.
okay.
I didn't realize they were in there draining my wallets. When they got in my computers, they sucked. They had my security guy told me is some turbo word, and they sucked all the information out of my computer, spit out everything except for my passwords and wallets. And they got into all the wallets, and I didn't know they were emptying my wallets as they were talking to me.
Yeah.
So I think, it had to be more than one person, probably a team that just knew what they were doing. And, but they had emptied all my wallets. And they left me with 3-4 cryptocurrencies that were worth $4 or $5 nobody had ever heard of.
Yeah, right.
That's not, they didn't want food, the ones that nobody wanted.
See,
So,
and that's one of the hard parts too, is you have to go back to the people that trusted you, and you have to explain how you failed. And
yeah,
that's what I had to do with my investors, and you sit there and you got to go over how did this happen? How did I let this happen? Why did I miss the signs? And it's a feeling of failure, right?
yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. And I because I want people to understand, I did document this in the book, and I mention this, and I mention it on your show for people to know. I know I've never had a suicidal thought in my life, and I'm not saying I had that, but I was so hurt, so depressed, and I can see with people who are not on some rock solid ground, it would be easy to say, let me just get rid of this. Let me
Right.
just get out of this right now. I mean, I was feeling so bad, and I want people to understand that the reason I wrote it, I want people to understand, you went through like I did. No matter what, hang on, because life is good, life is precious, and don't ever let don't let somebody steal the most important thing, money you make back.
Yeah.
But you just can't replace life or limb. And
And love and all many other aspects of life you can't replace. Money you can. I agree. I was like you. I kept track of everything. When I went over to Dubai, I even had a little Apple tag on me that told me everywhere I went. when I went to the offices to sign the contracts, when I went to another place to fulfill the banking side of it, I even have an account. I can look on my computer and there's $5 million in it, which is what I was looking to borrow. So, and it was under my name. So they showed that they've deposited the money, and you just want to believe. And but then you try to start taking the money out, and all things start really falling apart fast. That's what happened with me. But even tracking where I was, which I thought would be helpful in capturing these people, what I didn't realize was no one in the United Arab Emirates really care, and they're not going after them. They don't care. You took Americans' money, good for you. And
More power to you.
I got off cheap. I mean, I have talked to business owners that have put millions in with these people.
You're talking about millions, huh?
Yeah, and I didn't put any that kind of money in,
Yeah.
and I realized that within about a few months of back and forth and talking and negotiations and me going over there, but some people I know, they've been in it for years, and it's like, how can you look to be borrowing money and the people you're looking to borrow it from keep tagging you along and keep asking for more money for 2, 3, 4+ years, and you never get it?
Yeah.
I mean, when do you shut that valve off, and when do you realize what's going on? So for everybody, it's different, right? When they come to the realization. For you, it was in the same day.
Yeah.
For me, it was over months. And the hard part was I thought I was fulfilling a calling. So I felt I had been called on January 29th of 2022. The good Lord came to me and said, I need you to serve. And the way to serve is to go out and teach and preach financial literacy and help people live better lives. And everything fell into place. I was building a business. I was going to generate 28 programs, 28 classes that I was going to provide to juniors and seniors in high school across the U.S. And I had all the plans. I had the studio. I had branding, marketing, IT people. I had everything lined up, and I knew exactly what the costs were going to be, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. And it was incredible that the good Lord put me in this position, and then I get the rug taken out from under me, and I'm out a lot of money, and I have to go back and I have to tell everybody I failed. I can't do anything. I mean, my team was so excited. They wanted to start working. I said, I can't have you start working until I know I can pay you.
Yeah.
Because I can't run up a bill that I owe you money and then lose money and not get the loan and never pay you. And so, you're right. It's tough to bounce back from that.
And Bill, what I love about that is a bad word. It's not love. What I like about your story, and it's a bad story, and I identify. We both been through that deep valley, but you were there to help people. This whole thing.
Yes.
You felt like you had a calling. You wanted to help people. And then that's really what I was trying to use with the cryptocurrencies. And I do tell in the book where, I'm not mad about the cryptocurrency industry. Scammers are out there, and it can be your online banking. It can be your, anybody out there. People are trying to scam you. So my book is it's written for everybody, no matter what. Everybody needs it, even if you don't do cryptocurrency. It's for everybody, but it's to get you prepared. And again, I want to do some good, and I use some crypto for some good projects, and for some things I'd made money on, and helped for digging wells in Africa, for people to have fresh water. I'd put in a lot for that, and different things that I wanted to use the resources for. And then you think, oh man, how did this happen? Lord, why me?
It makes it more painful, doesn't it?
It does. And you wanted to help people, and that's why I love about your show. You are helping people through the crucible and through the being conned and being robbed. And that's what it is. We were robbed, and
yes,
and so that's why I want to help people through my book. I cannot, get the money back. I mean, And again, I went to the
Right.
FBI, went to my local police station. The police helped. We did all the good, but they do in crypto. They have something called like a tornado app, and what they do is they steal your money. And in fact, I think I mentioned in the book, but when they cleaned up my computers, we were looking at the pages they were looking at and how they looked through everything I had. And again, one thing I had to do after this, I have like, you think all my online stuff, I had over like 200 passwords. I had to change every password.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know the limit of what they'd gone into, and credit cards, everything.
Yeah.
I just
Thanks.
didn't know, because it looks like they didn't do anything else but the crypto, but they sell all that information to the dark web. So,
Right. Right.
so again, I had to just protect myself everywhere, and freeze my accounts, as far as so many banking and everything, and I had to freeze my credit report, and still I keep it frozen. And it's probably one thing I tell everybody. And for years I didn't worry about it. Say, hey, but you probably ought to freeze your credit. Just and if you need it, you just unfreeze it. I had to apply for a business credit card just a couple months ago, and say, hey, we can't, you got your freeze on your credit. And so I always do unfreeze it 3 days, and then, and get what you need. So I just keep it frozen.
Then you go back in and freeze it again. And, because we had to do that with my wife. She got her information stolen from, I think I can narrow it down to the person that stole it, but nobody seems to have an interest, because I followed the IP address, and such. But my wife had to freeze her account. And note that, and when you have to call each of the different agencies, and you have to freeze with each one, and they have different policies. They might freeze it for a year, they might freeze it for 2 years, and then you have to go back and refreeze it again.
Yeah, and I'm glad you point that out. And that's there's the different there's the 3 main agencies there, and go into each one of them, and most of them want you to pay, but if you keep going down the line, you can usually do it for free. But you have to go through a bunch of things where they want you to pay monthly and all that. But to freeze it, you can go in. I believe for everybody, it doesn't cost you anything to freeze it.
Yeah.
But I am telling you, what you just said is this discussion is important, and I want people to hear about it. And again, I didn't tell you my whole subtitle of the book, and the title is Crypto Con, My 200K Nightmare, and 10 Key Steps to Safeguard Your Future. So I did go in there. I want not just to read what happened that was bad. I mean, you need to read my story. It needs to be out there to look for red flags and know what's going on. But I do give you 10 key steps to safeguard your future. And one of those things is just practice being scammed. And that's why I put together that little game on our website at cryptoconbook.com to give a little sense of the urgency that you get caught up in, of a timer. So those are different things. Just having someone to practice with you, trying to talk to you on the phone, or there's somebody, that's in your family, an elderly person that you're worried about. Sometimes you say, look, I'm going to practice scamming you, so you be aware of it. Just knowing that, they're out there. Sometimes it's better than talking about it, to practice going over, being scammed.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you coming on and willing to talk about this, because it is helping people by talking about the reality that it hits a lot of people, and it hits good people and smart folks, and even me with the financial background I have, they got me. They got my wife. I can tell you other stories of people I've talked to. They said, but it's so important to get the word out there that this isn't just something you hear about on the news. This is reality.
It does, Bill. But you mentioned, and again, I know of someone who worked all his life savings, and again, he was a Christian who loved, talking about the Lord and doing missionary work, and somebody scammed him out of his life savings because he thought they were a missionary going to go do missionary work.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of the people who are the most loving and innocent open up, those are ones that the scammers go after.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you're wanting to do good things. Maybe even if it's just for your family. I mean, I
yeah,
had an accountant friend of mine come to me and say, I've got this client. He's invested in this. He got a phone call and wound up investing money, and it did so well that he wound up giving them more money, and it did even better from what he could see on a screen.
yeah, yeah.
And so he gave even more money, and then all of a sudden, poof, the person he was talking to was gone. The money was gone, and it was his 401k, and it was,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I believe that person is now divorced. I mean, that money can create a lot of problems in marital life. It's one of the top reasons uh, that causes marriages to break up. But um, like you said, it's just money.
Yeah, but and Bill, and this, when you were talking about that, it was so hard to tell my wife, and I will, to her credit. She's, and she never cared about any of the crypto currencies and things anyway. She didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it.
Yeah.
And she said, something ever happens to you, you better have a plan for somebody to know what to do.
Yeah.
so, you do have make sure dealing with something that somebody will know about. But the thing I had to look at, and I do detail in my book, I could not sleep that night. I mean, I was so, I wanted revenge. I wanted money back. I couldn't believe it happened. I was dealing with guilt, dealing with shame. And I was walking in the neighborhood at night. I just had to get out and walk. I knew I wasn't going to do anything dangerous or anything, but I had to get out and just walk. And then
Yeah.
I found myself going back to my childhood, even remembering old hymns and stuff I remember in church. And I mean, I was trying to find some way to just calm down. I
Right.
mean, I was so revved up and just mad. And, I mentioned the book talking about, you want somebody to go to jail. I remember thinking, man, I wish, for Star Wars fans, I wish Chewbacca was around and could find out who that guy was and just pull his limbs out. I mean,
Right.
pull his arms out of their socket. But that, those are thoughts you have. And there is and I don't, Bill, if you ever, I went and watched it. It maybe not be the best movie. There's a lot of violence in there, but The Beekeeper. Somebody told me about The Beekeeper is the name of a movie that somebody got,
I've seen it.
conned through, cryptocurrency things. And of course it's, and that's what you want. You want somebody to come back with revenge and just wipe everybody out,
Yeah.
but that's not a healthy thought either. And that's why you just have to, and what I did, I had to live with forgiveness. I said, man, I
Yeah.
gotta forgive because I know it's not going to get back. I did go through the FBI, letting them know everything. And of course, they don't care about $200,000. That's nothing.
I know.
And I mean, I gave them everything I could, and even there were some things I thought that would help them find and catch the person. And I don't know, maybe they're working. I've never heard anything back, but I will say that I had to look at that. Knowing I have a good family. I wasn't in a hospital. I didn't have broken legs. I wasn't in a car wreck. None of my family was hurt. I mean, I hurt because I lost $200,000 and all the things I think I could do with that. I mean, I really, that was a gut punch, but I had to get back away from it and realize, I was 64 years old, and I thought, in all my 64 years and everything I've seen, this is one little blip. I mean, it
Yeah.
hurt, but I could get over it, and I could, I could work hard and make some more money. It just,
But like you're pointing out, there are stages you go through when this happens to you.
yes,
It's a gut punch.
yeah,
Uh, and then you have that feeling of failure, and that's really tough to feel that you failed. You just kind of put your tail between your legs and your head down for a while, and hope nobody sees that you're such a failure. and then you get pissed off,
Oh
and
yeah.
and
Oh
then
yeah.
you want that revenge, right? And you go
Yep.
after that. So there's this process, but the key to this is what you said, is you have to learn to forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself because the thought of not doing that can be so damaging to you, to your any relationships you have, any business going forward. There's so much harm that can be done by not forgiving yourself and holding it in.
And when we talk about post traumatic stress syndrome, and even as I'm talking to you, and you probably have this too. Deep down, there's there's something inside my gut now. Even though
Yeah,
I've put it aside, I've tried to say, okay, forgive myself, forgive others, and there's still a little gut punch even talking about it
well,
because I thought
there's pain in bringing it up again, right?
there he is, there he is,
Absolutely, and
Bill.
I'm with you 100%, and I'm feeling it myself right now. It
And I bet a lot of listeners who are listening to this, those who have been scammed, they're feeling that, and some of them may not ever forgive themselves. I don't know, but you need to. It's not your fault. The
right.
scammer, the thieves, the scoundrels, they're the sinners. They're the one that broke the law. They broke you and trying to break you, and don't let it continue because life is full of good things,
There's
and that's
there's
not a good thing. But
much more
there's
to
so
life.
much
I
good.
agree.
Yes, so much.
Much more to life, and I often wonder. It's like, why do people spend so much time and energy scamming and learning how to scam? If you just put that into a legitimate operation or business or career, you might really be somebody great. You might really do
Oh,
something
yeah.
really phenomenal.
You,
I
to
mean,
talk about how they use the words, the social engineering, and all the technology they got to know and how to scam. I mean, if they put that to work, that what they could be
yeah.
a benefit to society, and
But
yet,
I don't know what drives people to go one way or another. It's greed is part of it, but I just say, well, have fun in hell
yeah,
because
yeah,
there's room for you.
and I'm afraid that's where a lot of them are headed. That's why I hope, and I know the scammers will probably read my book, and that that's one thing they're good at is research. So scammers are going to read my book, and if anybody and scammers probably listen to this podcast because word's going to get out, and people are going to watch it over and over, and
Yeah.
the scammers are going to come watch it. So my message to the scammers is turn from your wicked ways, please.
Now,
Life is worth living. Stop hurting little old ladies, and stop ruining people's lives and ruining marriages. All these things the guilt is on you. It's on the scammers. It's on the scoundrels.
and
On the sinners.
the interesting part about that is, and you're 100% right, um, is the scammers, they're never going to be satisfied. It's never
Um,
enough. And
yeah.
they're never going to be happy. Oh, they might have moments, you know, popping that champagne and throwing a big party or something like that, but there might be moments, but overall with their life, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be fulfilled.
No, you're right, and they're always going to be looking over the back because they will get caught sometime. Technology is good. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's getting better, and it's getting. The scoundrels think they got it, but I mean, there are things on the horizon, things to be used now to really zone in on them. And one thing I was going to tell you for the audience to know, uh, when and I started allude to it earlier, and I guess I got off track, but when the computer security guy was going over my computer, looking at the pages, and there's one page on there, and it showed where at the time it was I forgot how many bitcoins, like 38 Bitcoin. Now, I didn't have one single Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is worth over 100, around
Yeah, you had
$100,000 now.
tokens.
So the tokens, but at the time, but it had 38 Bitcoins were I said, what is this? I didn't have that kind of money. He
Yeah.
said it's worth like $1.8 million. He said that's probably what the scammers had collected during the day, and they used your computer to launder $1.8 million
Oh,
when they were in my computer. And we could see this, and on the pages they were at, but they laundered $1.8 million on my computer. And
So you were a millionaire at one point in your life.
well, my computer was.
Yeah, right? Yeah, well, my computer gave me 5 million, so I know that feeling. But
No.
I wish we had more time to discuss this more, but I just want to make sure everybody gets your book is called CryptoCon, my 200,000
My
crypto
200K nightmare, yeah. And
200K
you can
night.
go to cryptoconbook.com. Now, that's my website. But you can
Yeah,
look up the book on Amazon. It's on Amazon, Books and No,
it's Ed
Barnes and
Holiday
Nobles. And,
is the author.
yeah,
Um,
Ed Doc Holliday.
CryptoConbook.com is his website, and he's got some good information on there. And the 10, is it 10 steps or 10 questions?
Yeah, no, it's 10 key steps to safeguard your future. Some things that everybody needs to go over to know that they're prepared for the scammers that are out there that are already, they're looking at your account right now, figuring out how
Right.
they're going to scam you.
Right, and it doesn't end because now they have all that information. They've sold it,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
or in the process of selling it in the dark web over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That never ends. So that for life. But lots of good points today. I really appreciate you coming on. I know this is not easy to talk about. It's not easy for me to talk about my issues, but you know what? I share in your pain, and and it's just it's challenging, right? It's
And Bill, I will say you heard me laughing, and I've got to the point, and you can too. We can all laugh because you have to laugh to keep from crying sometimes. But life is good. God is good, and I'm glad that I didn't want to go through this valley, but thank goodness there's people like you who let me come on the show, explain it, and then we can share this this grief in our lives that doesn't mean our lives are over. We can move forward.
well, Ed, I can't say how much enough of how much I appreciate you coming on the show and being willing to talk about this because most people aren't. Most people don't want anybody to know that
Yeah.
something bad happened to them and that they may have failed at some aspect of life. Folks, we fail all the time in many aspects of life, but that's how we learn and we grow back, and also listen up because these scammers are going to be reading his book. They're going to go on his website. They're going to learn this stuff too. So if you're only keeping up by getting this book and going on his website, in hopes that it will help you because that's the whole point. Ed didn't do this. He's not writing this book to make money, to get his money, write his money back.
No, that'd
No,
be great, but no, it's there to help people.
yeah,
It is there to
exactly.
help people.
Exactly. And it's much in the exact same way I wrote my book, Our Mindset on Money. It's to help people, and I like saying if I sell 1,000 books and only help one, I'm not happy. But if I sell one book and help 1,000 people, that's a good start.
Bill, I'll tell you real quick. Uh, I tell people if I'd spent $100,000 on this book a year ago, I'd still have $100,000 more than I have now.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Garage Talk with Bill Haase, teaching all things on financial literacy and trying to help all my listeners live better and more abundant lives, and by taking control of money, and then protecting it is one of those important steps. So, Ed, I thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.